Most of us have been taught to manage work the same way: make a list, assign tasks, track progress in a spreadsheet, hold a status meeting, whatever, repeat. For a long time, that was good enough. But as projects got more complex and teams got more distributed, that approach starts to crack. Things fell through their gaps, nobody has a clear picture of what's actually happening, work piles up in ways that are invisible until it's way too late. Kanban is a response to that problem. It's a workflow management method built around one core idea, and that's if you can see your work clearly, you can manage it better. And while it sounds straightforward, the implications of that principle runs pretty deep. Today, I want to walk you through what Kanban is, where it came from, how it works, why it's one of the most widely adopted management frameworks across industries, and how it's used between like software development to healthcare to manufacturing. First off, a little bit about its past. It originates from a post war Japan, specifically from Toyota's production system in the late 1940s. An industrial engineer named Taichi Ono was tasked with improving efficiency on Toyota's factory floor, and he found his inspiration in an unexpected place, which was American supermarkets. What Ono observed was that supermarkets didn't stockpile inventory blindly. Instead, they restocked shelves in direct response to what customers were actually buying. Supply matched demand in real time, which minimized waste and kept operations running smoothly. Ono applied that logic to manufacturing, which rather than producing parts continuously and stockpiling them, they would produce only what was needed when it was needed. And this was triggered by a physical card passed through different stations that would just have what is needed on it so that they knew what to actually work on instead of just making stuff blindly and having a ton of stockpile stuff that they may never need or they may need in years versus stuff that they need to send out by the end of today. That card was the Kanban, which in Japanese translates roughly to visual signal or signboard. The results at Toyota were significant. Waste dropped, quality improved, and the output increased. This approach became a cornerstone of what we now call lean manufacturing, a philosophy that has influenced operations management globally for decades. Kanban remained primarily a manufacturing concept in 2007 when David Anderson adapted it for knowledge work. He recognized that software teams and office environments faced the same fundamental problems that Toyota had faced on the factory floor, which was too much work in progress, invisible bottlenecks, and no shared understanding of what was actually happening at any given moment. His adaptation of Kanban for knowledge work sparked a broader movement that has since expanded well beyond software into marketing, legal, healthcare, finance, government, basically anything that could have a task list. I use it personally in my games, as we'll get to later on. Kanban was built on 5 core principles, and understanding them is the easiest way to understand how the system works. First step is visualizing the work. Every task is represented as a card, and every stage of a workflow is represented as a column on a board. At a minimum, you have to do, in progress, and done, but in reality, usually you'll have a lot more than that. That way, it's easier to organize. In practice, most of these teams map their columns to their actual process steps in much more detail. The result is that at any given moment, anyone on the team or outside of the board is public can look at the board and understand exactly where everything stands. You don't need to have status meetings of where are we, what needs to be done, everything else. You can kind of just take and grab what you need. The second principle is limiting work in progress, commonly called WIP limits. This is perhaps the counterintuitive aspect of Kanban and also the most important. The limits cap how many tasks can occupy any given column at one time, and when a column is full, no new work enters it until something moves forward. The reasoning is grounded and quite solid in both cognitive science and operations research, as multitasking requires a very large cognitive cost. With every context switch takes time and mental energy. From an operations standpoint, queuing the theory tells us that the more items in a system, the longer each one takes to complete. The WIP limits reduce that queue. It keeps your focus concentrated and consistently results in faster delivery of individual items since you're not splitting up your time between multiple ones. The third principle is managing flow, as it's not just about tracking work, it's about measuring how smoothly work moves through your system. You're looking at metrics like cycle time, which is how long a task takes from start to finish, and through point, which is how many tasks you complete in a given period. When flow slows down, the board shows you exactly where and why. The fourth principle is making process policies explicit. Every column should have a clear, agreed upon definition. What does it mean for a task to move from in review to done, or from to do into in progress? Who needs to sign off? What are the criteria? When these rules are written down and visible, there's no ambiguity and no room for different team members to operate on different assumptions. This is also seen in GitHub with the pull request, how you can set it up where you have to have multiple people agree on it. The fifth principle is continuous improvement, as Kanban is not a static system, and teams using it are expected to regularly reflect on their data and evolve their process. Small, incremental changes, tested and evaluated over time, compound into significant improvements, which is sometimes called a Kaizen mindset, borrowed from the same philosophy that gave us Kanban in the first place. Now, to understand how it works in progress, I'm going to use an example that I personally use it for, which is gaming, in particular in the game series Monster Hunter. In that game, you fight monsters, they drop items, and you use those items to make better gear and loot to fight stronger monsters. Each monster also has a elemental weakness and a type of damage weakness, and that means to be properly effective, you have to do it in a proper order. So, let's say there's a weapon you want to craft. It requires 5 different materials from different monsters, and the same thing with armor. If you're going to have to be farming a monster that's weak to fire damage, then you're going to want to have something that does fire damage. However, that monster that would drop that would have to be weak to something like water. So it's a matter of where do you want to start, and then how do you want to go about it. I use the Kanban board for what all needs to be done, and whenever I find that first set of monsters I want to fight, I'll move those to in progress. I'll start going through them. Then once I create that gear, I'll move it into done, and I'll move the next one in. Otherwise, if you're trying to farm all of them at once, you're going to have it be a lot slower due to running out of... you're going to be taking up your time trying to do multiple hunts whenever it would just be faster to get stronger gear to do the one hunt and then go do the next one. That is the main thing with Kanban. It's easy to see. It's easy to understand. It allows you to better organize from I need this done to I want this done. Because that way you know, this isn't required, then I don't have to do it right now versus something that actually is. I should do that first. This also works with marketing because they can have the board say something like ideas, drafting, design, approval, and published, where they're brainstorming ideas. Then if they go through with those, they can move it to drafting and design. Once they get approved by the higher up people, they can be published then. And you just kind of keep it going across. Each unit of the work becomes a card, and those cards usually need a description, an owner, relevant deadlines, whatever it needs. Then team members can pull those into their column when they have the capacity, and they're not pushed by the manager whenever there's a large load. The distinction between push and pull systems is fundamental how Kanban manages workload and prevents the kind of burnout that comes from being buried under work that you never chose to take on. Now, as far as how Kanban works to different frameworks, Scrum is the most direct comparison, as Scrum organizes work into fixed length sprints, typically 2 weeks each, which the team will commit to a defined scope of work. Has a prescribed set of roles like product owners, Scrum Master, development team, and a set of ceremonies including sprint planning, daily stand-ups, sprint reviews, etc. It works well for product development teams with relatively predictable work streams and the ability to batch work into cycles. Kanban, on the other hand, has no fixed iterations and no required rows or anything. The work flows continuously and new items can be added at any time without needing to stop a sprint. It works better for teams whose work is highly variable and demand-driven, like IT operations, customer support, legal teams, or any environment where priorities shift frequently and unpredictably. Some organizations use a hybrid approach called Scrumban, which was cool to learn about because it borrows Scrum's planning structure and cadence while applying Kanban's continuous flow principles and WIP limits. It's a pragmatic adaptation that works well for teams transitioning between frameworks. Kanban endures because it solves a problem that doesn't go away. The problem of managing more work than is immediately visible across many people that can easily coordinate in environments that change faster than any static plan can accommodate. Its origins on a factory floor in post-war Japan, its adaptation to software development in the early 2000s, and its current application across nearly everything shows the exact same thing. The underlying principles of Kanban is sound. Just make work visible, limit the overload, manage flow, improve continuously. The ideas hold up regardless of what the work actually is. If you want to do it in a restaurant, you can. Just divide it between team members. Kanban works anywhere, and that's why it's amazing to learn. So, that's about it. See ya.